Welcome back to Talk Live, ladies and gentlemen. We are back live here on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Sponsored by DunTalk, DUNTALK.com. We got assurance of that today because today's show is, about, I would say the trial of the century, but the trial of a generation. And that is the Diddy trial, ladies and gentlemen. Diddy trial is going into its third day, I believe. Full trial mode is third day. They've gone through jury selection. They've gone through opening arguments, and now we are into the trial, ladies and gentlemen. When we are just going to recap what's going on the last couple of days. How y'all doing? It's been a while since I've been back, but we will have a show today. We'll have a show tomorrow, and then we'll have usual service next week. We're gonna really get back to this because again, I was working on different files and campaigns. So again, we are back again, and Lord knows, I look like I've been looking on different files and campaigns. I've been out for a few weeks, Lord knows, and yeah, I definitely need a haircut. But thank you very much for joining me here on Talk live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Jays won, Leafs lost big, and yes, watching the Warriors and Timberwolves at it right now in the background. But anyways, let's get right to it on this Diddy trial. As I said, we were going to start at 9:30, but here we are, 10 o'clock. Moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. Still, thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live. So let's get right to it. Let's see what's happened on the first 3 days of the Diddy trial. So let me get onto the screen, the browser screen. There it is. Bang, bang, thank you, man. And we're here. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed Diddy on trial. And the first one is going to come from none other than, Nate the Lawyer. Nate the Lawyer is doing wonderful things on the YouTube streets. Again, fair use, as we're showing this through his members only campaign. I do pay for his members only campaign, but this will be the one and only segment from Nate the Lawyer, but he's going to recap the first few days. And the first few days it doesn't have the fireworks of these last few days, as Cassie has been on the stand for the last couple of days. They started out with a whimper, but they are roaring like lions right now, the prosecution, with their star witness, that is Cassie Ventura. And we're going to get into right now the first day of the Diddy trial through the help of Nate the Lawyer. Subscribe to Nate the Lawyer, doing wonderful things in these YouTube streets. And we're going to get on to it right now, ladies and gentlemen. It's Diddy on trial, ladies and gentlemen. He does not look like that. Clearly, if you see it on Talk Live right now, believe me, the gray is underway and in full effect, ladies and gentlemen. No. The coiffed, manicured exterior that was Diddy at the time is not Diddy now. So let's get into it. Luckily, there aren't any cameras allowed in the courtroom, as this is a U.S. federal case, and there aren't any no cameras, no day trials on the Diddy trial today. So day trial. No live feed from the Diddy trial today. Is all from court reporters. Is all from the tried and true drawings and renderings of the court artists, and the court reporters. So let's get into this right now. Diddy on trial. This is day one. This is the first day of Diddy trial. In case you missed it, let's go.
One of the Diddy trial. Sean P. Diddy Combs is a billionaire rap mogul from New York.
Welcome to New York, mother, where we don't play.
Now, P. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to 5 counts, including sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and transporting women for prostitution. If convicted, he faces 15 years to life. Now, the prosecution's opening statement was given by Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson. Now, she straight up said Combs ran a criminal organization with loyal staff that helped cover up his crimes. And when she's talking about crimes, we're talking about kidnapping, arson, drug and sex crimes, bribery, obstruction of justice, like some real heavy hitters here.
So before we go into further, these are all encapsulated within the RICO charge, the racketeering, the racketeering charge that encompasses all of these crimes, as you can see here. Let's get into the RICO charge quickly. And RICO being, yes, indeed. So RICO definition: Racketeering Influence and Corruption Organizations Act, so the RICO Act. So that is where we stand at the moment. All these crimes that Diddy were accused of in terms of sex trafficking, kidnapping, forced labor, arson, bribery, enticement to engage in prostitution, and obstruction of justice. All of these are encapsulated within the RICO charge, the racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, ladies and gentlemen. So, Diddy's accused of some heavy crimes here, and it's up to his top legal team to see their way out of it. Let's continue.
Justice, like some real heavy hitters here. Now, they also allege that Combs used his fame, power, lies, threats, drugs, and violence to coerce women into marathon sex parties, the famous freak-offs we've all heard about. She actually went into some detail about some of the acts that were performed, but since I want to keep this video monetized, I will not repeat what she said. Now, Combs' attorney is Tenny Garagos. She says, quote, Sean Combs is a complicated man, but this is not a complicated case. This case is about voluntary choices made by capable adults in consensual relationships. Now,
very good point raised there by Counsel Garagos. We'll just go back to this quickly. Sorry, a little further back. There we go. A very good defense opening argument there by Diddy, in the sense that it's not going to be about the crimes and what the defense attorneys are saying is that these crimes aren't crimes. They are consensual adults being involved in consensual acts. And Diddy is a complicated man, but not a complicated case. These are voluntary choices. These people did of their own volition, made their own choices, and Diddy should not be charged with RICO charges or any charges in that fact, because all these people were consenting adults who participated in these quote-unquote freak-offs and who were a part of this enterprise, or this these consensual activities between adults. Let's continue.
In consensual relationships. Now, the defense also had to admit that their client had flaws like extreme jealousy and a bad temper, and also conceded violence took place in some of those relationships. And that video of Combs beating Cassie in that hotel, that's not evidence of sex trafficking. That's evidence of domestic violence. Now, the defense is really...
So again, the defense had to say that because, again, the videotape is clear, and I'm sure they have other videotape evidence of it. And, Diddy, they're saying he's no saint, but then again, he's saying that other people weren't saints either, to be fair. Right, let's continue.
Trying to stretch the imagination here, saying this is evidence only of domestic violence and not of the sex trafficking allegation. Because, let's just be honest, it could be evidence for both. For instance, a woman who's being sex trafficked by her boyfriend may also be a victim of domestic violence. But even with that, the defense's main argument is that these women made free choices every single day throughout the years. And she portrayed these women as capable, strong, rather than victims. So after opening statements, our first witness is Israel Flores. Flores is now a police officer working for the Los Angeles Police Department, but in 2016, he worked security at the Intercontinental Hotel. Now, that's the hotel where Diddy was filmed beating Cassie in the hallway. Now, he testified on May 5th, 2016. He responded to the report of a woman in distress on the 6th floor. He said when he got up there, he found Cassie cowering in a corner, covering her face, and Combs, wearing only a towel and socks, slouched over in a chair with a devilish, scary look in his eyes. He said when he looked at Cassie, she had a bruised purple eye. Now, here's the real important point legally. Flores recounted that Combs was blocking Cassie's departure, at one point telling her she couldn't go. Now, the reason why that's legally important, because that attacks the defense's notion that this was consent. You have someone, a third party, saying that she wanted to leave and he was specifically being violent, so she could not leave. Now, Flores' testimony set up a critical piece of evidence, that security camera footage from the assault. Now, Flores said that he took a cell phone video of the hotel CCTV monitors for his personal record, later explaining that, quote, if I had told my wife what had happened, she wouldn't have believed me. So that allowed the prosecution to show the video. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the video is of P. Diddy beating Cassie in the hallway. So Flores says eventually Cassie was able to leave in a black SUV. Flores said him and the hotel manager went upstairs to check on Combs. Said Combs then pulled out a large stack of cash, told Flores not to speak about what happened, implying a payoff. And Flores said he didn't take the cash because he perceived it to be a bribe. Now to back up.
Now, again, this will come in handy a bit later in the trial, a bit later in the case, because there is a how shall I say, a bit of a gray line between what can be considered a bribe and what can't be considered a bribe. But we'll answer that a bit later. But there is a definite difference between what is a bribe in terms of a charge and what is not. And a lot of people know this, but we're going to get into that a little later. Let's continue.
Flores' account, he documented everything at the time in an incident report and informed his supervisor. Now, defense attorney Brian Steele started cross-examination of Mr. Flores. So obviously, this attorney has to attack this cop's credibility. For instance, the police report didn't say anything about Combs' devilish stare or Cassie's black eye. But Flores stood by the statements and said he was there and he remembers it. And Steele attacked this notion of a bribe. See, in the melee, Combs had broken a vase, a phone, and other property. He suggested that Combs was trying to pay for the property damage, not offer a bribe. Now, for the prosecution, this was a great first witness. Cop, you get the videotape in, and on top of that, he is an eyewitness to a lot of the events on the videotape. Now, Combs is accused of coercing women into commercial sex acts through manipulation, threats, violence, etc. This is 18 U.S.C. section 1591, sex trafficking. So by force, threats, or coercion, if Sean Combs knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, or maintained a person, aka Cassie, and he knew that she would engage in commercial sex acts, he would be guilty of sex trafficking by force. And one of the elements is force, and that's what this first witness was speaking to. The force that P. Diddy or Sean Combs was using on Cassie to get her to stay in this position. He physically beat her on camera. Now, the next witness was to...
So, very good by the good introductory witness by the prosecution in the sense that it allows for the videotape evidence of P. Diddy in the Los Angeles hotel and the beating that happened there to be let in as evidence through this witness. You have this eyewitness there who was there seeing, who was there watching, there to see the matter, so it's not considered hearsay. And also, though cross-examined, he stuck to his story. He said, no, I saw this. Yes, I thought Diddy was trying to restrict Cassie from leaving, from leaving and doing it against her will. And, you know, what he had to say was absolutely true, and it couldn't be recanted. So, again, a very good witness on the part of the prosecution. I think this is a win in terms of the prosecution, in terms of the prosecutional case, and prosecution's case, sorry. And, yeah, I think it's a great starting witness to what will head on into the big hitter, which is Cassie Ventura. Let's get into it.
Speak to the sexual nature of the crimes. His name is Daniel Phillip. He's a male escort and stripper. Now, he says in late 2012, he was booked to do a bachelorette party at the Gramercy Park Hotel in NYC. He said when he arrived at the room, it was just Cassie, alone in the hotel room. Now, she was dressed in lingerie, but claimed that her husband wanted to do something nice for her. He said then Combs came into the room, but Combs used some fake identity, claimed that he was in importing and exporting. Now, Phillips said he knew it was Combs immediately. He recognized his voice. But he said instead of getting paid a couple $100s for the bachelor party, Combs and Cassie offered him $5,000 to have sex with Cassie while Combs watched in the corner. And then Phillips said it became like a regular thing. He would go to the freak-offs, get paid between $700 to $6,000 per encounter. Most of the time he's having sex with Cassie and Combs present. Now, he said a normal encounter with Cassie could last anywhere from an hour to as long as 10 hours. And he said Combs loved to record everything. Combs had recordings of all their encounters, and he even had some recordings of their encounters. But Phillips started talking about one particularly violent encounter. He said one night Combs was enraged by Cassie. Phillips saw a liquor bottle fly past Cassie's head as Combs shouted, "When I tell you to come here, you come here. Now, not later." He said Combs then grabbed Cassie by the hair, dragged her into another room. He said he heard Cassie screaming and yelling, Combs slapping her repeatedly. He kept hearing Cassie say, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And Phillips said he didn't intervene because he was concerned about his own safety. Now, for Phillips' part, Combs took a photograph of Phillips' driver's license and personal information and told him this was just for insurance, just in case. Again, this was Phillips' testimony on direct. He also admitted that if he ever failed to perform sexually to Mr. Combs' satisfaction, sometimes he wouldn't be paid for the session. But Phillips admitted no matter how bad it got, he still went back. Now, for this
So again, yeah, I mean, this is quite damning evidence as well that you have a sex worker who had sex with Diddy's girlfriend Cassie and was paid for it. So it can't. This again shows evidence of prostitution. That this gentleman was paid money for sex with his girlfriend. So he being a voyeur to said acts, and it happened again and again and again, and during freak offs, and was videotaped. And a lot of those videotapes, I'm sure, were secured after that raid of his two homes on Star Island in Miami and also in L.A. So again, it's and also at his home in New York as well. So again, it's another witness that stated that Diddy indeed was a party to these freak-offs, a party to these sexual acts on his wife, and again was violent and coercive towards Cassie in order to have these sexual acts occur. So again, it showed again that she performed these acts against her will. Let's continue.
Witness Xavier Donaldson was the lawyer for the defense team who committed this cross-examination. Now, obviously, you're going to attack the credibility of a gigolo/stripper for hire. Now, Donaldson wanted us to start probing into how Philip was specifically chosen to meet Cassie that first night at the Gramercy Hotel. The defense team also insinuated that Philip had some motive, for either financial or popularity-based. He wanted to go viral. Now, cross-examination was paused until tomorrow because we ran out of time. So in day one, the government is going through the sex trafficking allegations. We have the force shown by the security guard at the hotel when Cassie was beaten by Sean Combs, and now we have the coercion and the commercial sex engagement, another requirement for the sex trafficking charge. So that's day one of the Diddy trial. It's already getting a little spicy, but it sounds like they're about to go to some real fireworks. They're talking about kidnapping, arson. They got a lot that they want to prove. And it looks like they got the goods. So with all that said, don't forget,
Okay, thank you very much to Nate the Lawyer for that recap. But and again, like and subscribe to Nate the Lawyer doing wonderful things in these YouTube streets. But again,
subscribe to all great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and
we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to Nate the Lawyer. But we're gonna move on to again TMZ, who's done may I say excellent work. I've watched Law and Crime, I've watched Court TV, I've watched a lot of these other things, but again, these guys, I gotta say, those though they can be sensationalist at times, really nail it in terms of and properly surmising and summarizing the events of the Diddy trial on a daily basis. And we're going to go to day 5, and this is where we end with the cross-examination of the second witness, Mr. Flores. Oh, not Mr. Flores. Mr. Let's get this here. Here we go.
voice. But he said instead of getting paid a couple $100, he said then Combs came into the room. But Combs used some fake identity, claimed that he was in importing and exporting. Now, Philip said he knew it was Combs immediately. He recognized his voice.
Mr. Phillip. So, again, we're getting back to Mr. Phillip and his cross-examination. So we're going to take
P. Diddy, or Sean Combs, was using on Cassie to get her.
Diddy and with TMZ right now as to the cross-examination of Mr. Phillip. How shall I say, the hired gun, as they say, or the hired sexual aid involved in the intercourse with Cassie Ventura at the behest of both Diddy and Cassie Ventura, but really allegedly it was Diddy who asked for these interactions to happen. Let's continue.
Welcome to Behind the Bar. It is day 5 of the Diddy criminal trial, and things are now underway. We have selected a jury of 12 people. There are 8 men on this jury, 4 women. It is racially diverse, and they are the people who are going to sit in judgment of Diddy as this case plays out. There's also 6 alternates in case any of those jurors have to be excused for some reason. You'll have 6 backups who are also following the trial and can sub in if need be. In court today, I want to go over a couple things. Diddy came into court wearing his usual outfit of his sweater and a collared shirt underneath. His family was also there in support, lots of his children. I believe his mother, Janice, was also there. And Diddy was seen at counsel table. I was wondering how this struck you, Jason, reading Bible scripture while things
had a Bible in hand.
Had a Bible in hand. And this is one of the things that, many prisoners get their hands on Bibles. They sort of, find themselves renewed by being brought to justice in this way. But how do you think this plays? Sitting there, the jury is now impaneled, and he's there like a little choir boy reading the Bible.
I think it's hard to get into to the minds of any any juror, and they can be surprising what they say after the trial sometimes. To me, it is such a transparent and cynical move by Diddy. We're going to convince the jury that this person, they're going to hear testimony about, even by Diddy's own admission, that he was one of the most sort of sexually deviant, and that's not a judgmental term, just deviant people that we've ever heard about. The things that he was engaged in, we'll talk about a couple of them today.
Or outside the norm.
And that's being quite kind. Yeah. That he all of a sudden, and by the way, is a mogul and has been involved in shootings and involved in a lot of different drug stuff. He's all of a sudden, after being caught and imprisoned and in a fight for his life, has found God. Now, that's quite possible.
Absolutely.
But to me, he's not going to testify, right? So that testimony is not going to be there. You got to just leave it to the jury to infer what it will by the fact he's reading the Bible. It seems, again, so cynical and trying to pull the wool over the jury's eyes in just a way I just don't think it's going to be effective.
Yeah, look, we don't know what's in his heart, what is sincere and what is not. It struck me the same way. Very transparent, very cynical. It's one thing to dress appropriately, let your gray hair grow in. Some of those optics, I think, do become effective because you look maybe enfeebled, and it humanizes you a little bit. This was a bridge too far. But I want to get into, we are now into opening statements here. So the prosecution is stepping...
So we stepped back a bit there, so excuse me for that. We stepped that back a bit because they're going to go with the opening statements of the prosecution defense, and we've already been through that. So we're going to go to the next day here. Yes, just want to verify that. We just want to go into the next day here, and that is, yes. So that would be today. Here we go. That would be yesterday. And this is where, again, we end off with the prosecution of of the sex worker there, and also the introduction of Cassie Ventura and her testimony in chief. Okay, so let's get into it here, and and thank you very much, TMZ Live. Subscribe to TMZ, doing wonderful things in these YouTube streets for real, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. Oh, let me go back here.
Day 6 of the Diddy trial, and Cassie Ventura took the stand and testified for nearly a full day about her relationship with Diddy. And I believe that the testimony was more intense, more sensational, and I think more disturbing than I or just about anybody realized it was going to be. Derek, if you can for us, give us the highlights of Cassie's testimony. How did this go down? She was on the stand for better part of 5 or 6 hours today. What exactly happened?
Yeah, this really was a full day of testimony. It's the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Cassie came to the stand. She is, of course, pregnant, and she was ready to testify about the full course of her relationship with Diddy. And remember, they were together for 10 years. This was a decade-long relationship, and that will come into play when the defense has an opportunity to cross-examine her and ask her about the terms of that relationship.
The whole idea of consent, yeah.
But this was her laying out the narrative in the prosecution's case in chief. And she squarely addresses that beating video in the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. But even before then, they go back in time and said, when did these freak-offs really start? And she really painted a picture of the very first freak-off, where she says she was 22 years old. This occurred at one of Diddy's homes. She said it was highly directed. There was masquerade masks involved. There were escorts involved. There were at least 2 sessions in that first freak-off, and the session was over when the escort, who had been paid for the services, was done, had sort of performed the services that they were paid for. She says that she felt as though she couldn't say no to these freak-offs. She had dated Diddy for enough time at that point that saying no didn't seem like an option to her because he would get very angry. She was worried about sort of him blackmailing her potentially.
This is everything. Could she have left? And I think at some level the answer is yes. She could have gone to police. She was not physically restrained. She went out. She performed jobs. She traveled all around the world without him.
They dated. They were on red carpets together. They were in a relationship.
At any point, she could have physically left, gone to the police, gone to friends, gone to family, said, I want out. Apparently, none of that happened. Obviously, the defense is going to make a big deal about that. But
she would say psychologically, I felt trapped.
But and it's not
by that relationship.
It's not just, and there's a point to that, right?
There's a big point to it.
She testified to routine physical abuse, both during the freak-offs and outside of the freak-offs. Certainly emotional abuse, and also her career prospects largely tied to him.
Yes.
And she also, just for what it's worth, knew him to be a violent person outside of her relationship with him. And I'm sure there was some element of fear there. But nevertheless, I think it's worth noting, because defense is sure is not going to make a big deal of it probably tomorrow, that at any point she could have gone to police, she could have gone to family, she could have gotten protection, and she didn't.
Remember, the first witness...
Okay, just before we move on, there is a lot to take in from that. As Cassie Ventura, the star witness, the key witness to the prosecution, had arrived on the stand as of yesterday. She started her testimony as of yesterday. And again, I think it's poignant that they got her in early because I believe she is 8 to 9 months pregnant at this time. She is liable to have a baby at any moment. And so they would like to get her testimony in as soon as they can before the baby happens, and she goes through her recovery after post delivery. So again, it was key that they got her in early so that she could answer the questions at the time. Now again, so there's that one instance, and number two, it sort of falls in well with the prosecution's first witnesses, in the sense that they set the scene of the beating at the hotel, and then the person who saw pretty much all these allegations of all of these charges of RICO under the RICO Act. The star witness, Cassie Ventura, would then testify and give her testimony as to the validity of all these acts, and she being the person in those videotapes, it leads quite well into her testimony, because she's the one who was on the videotape. So again, I think because of her pregnancy and because of these lead witnesses, I think it's perfectly fine for her to be brought in right away as a star witness, so that there is indeed a bit of there is a timeline. There's a better timeline between the witnesses and the act itself. and other things because I think her relationship with Diddy lasted pretty much throughout the years of the freak-offs. I think when Diddy started seeing Cassie Ventura, the freak-offs began. So again, it is quite poignant and good that they had her at this time because of her pregnancy, and also because of the lead-in towards the hotel assault by Diddy on Cassie, the hotel battery on Diddy it's not assault, it's battery, it's actual battery between Diddy and Cassie, and also the fact of her pregnancy and how she would need to get this in before she had her baby and interrupt proceedings at that time. We have a comment from Lana BK. Isn't it crazy that people always ask women why they didn't leave abusive situations instead of asking why the men are abusive? Yeah, I mean, it absolutely true. But again, I think it's done in this instance because that's exactly what the defense attorneys are going to allege, is that you're a free will, you're a sound mind and body, you could have left, but you stayed for a number of years. Why did that happen? So it's just to play devil's advocate and pretty much bring those scenarios to light, because they will be brought to light by the defense. Quite simply, they're going to ask why indeed why indeed Cassie Ventura, who stayed in a relationship, one, and number two, stayed in the relationship, one, and not, and denied her participation in these freak-offs because she had every opportunity to do so. So the defense is going to always do that. So very good question that asked there by Lana. But again, this is brought up because this will be brought up by the defense attorneys. Let's continue.
Who came on yesterday, though, said that there was physical violence towards her, that he bore witness in hearing slapping during one occasion, said he could no longer perform sexually because it was so upsetting to him to see Diddy be violent with Cassie. So they have set up that some of this coercion, which might have been mental and in her subjective state of mind, she felt trapped. Some of it may have also been physical. We're really getting down to the brass tacks about what is coercion. Coercion is forcing someone against their will to do something, but it doesn't necessarily take place at gunpoint or knife point. These aren't Central Park rapes. This was in the context of a 10-year relationship. So it is hard to wrap your mind around, well, how could you be coerced into doing things you don't want for a 10-year span? So to establish that, they're going to really paint very vivid pictures of what the sexual terms of this relationship were. Were there promises and threats? She mentioned feeling like there could be blackmail. Was there monitoring and control? That's another form of potential coercion. And Diddy orchestrated these things, according to the prosecutors, and kept very tight tabs on how she did her nails. She testified that they had to look a certain way. Was there violence and intimidation? According to the first witness, there was some violence. And obviously, when you watch that beating video, that is certainly violent.
Well, let's leave that for a second, just because I think everything comes to a head with that video.
Yes.
There's so much before that, as you were mentioning, the nails. He directed according to Cassie's testimony, directed every single element of the freak-offs.
Yeah.
How she looked, how her appearance was. He said it, according to her, he said, you look too Hispanic. I want you to change your hair. Every minute detail, where the man was to be, when he was going to have sex with her, what, pre-sexual acts they were going to engage in together. She had to literally drop into a bathtub full of baby oil because he liked seeing her slick during the sexual performances.
And you can do all of these things consensually. You really can.
Right. Which is why the issue of coercion is so important, fundamental to the case.
It really is.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Now you know the reason for the baby oil. Did he like baby oil? Did he like baby oil on his women, especially Cassie? And he wanted her dripping of baby oil when they were having sex. When he was having sex with any escorts that he may hire, including the gentleman who was hired previously. Just a second. We'll get his name. I'm going to write his name down, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies here. Yes.
To stay in this position. He physically beat her on sex trafficking by force. And one of the elements is force. And that's what this first witness was speaking to. The force that P. Diddy or Sean Combs was using on Cassie to get her to stay in this position. He physically beat her on camera. Now, the next witness was to speak to the sexual nature of the crimes. His name is Daniel Phillip. He's a...
There we go. It was Daniel Phillip. There we go. So, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Just wanted to get his name. So, Daniel Phillip, again, he was directed on what angles to have sex with Cassie. He was directed on how to have sex with Cassie. Cassie was asked to wear white nail polish when having sex with any of these escorts, and she had to be, totally covered in baby oil. She had to get into a tub of baby oil in order that every orifice was covered in it, so that the sex was to Diddy's liking. So again, Diddy was the Svengali, the director, if you will, of all of these sexual escapades, to which Cassie was the star of all these videos, and he videotaped these videos. And again, these escorts were paid for their services depending on their performance. So, as maybe has not yet been heard, but will be heard, they were paid up to from $700 to $5,000, $6,000 in order to, I think it was brought out in Nate the lawyer's video that we have just seen, $6,000 for their performance, $700 to $6,000. So it's So again, the prosecution is showing is trying to paint a scene with her testimony that Diddy was the executive producer, he was the director, he was the end all and be all of all these videos of all these sexual escapades with Cassie Ventura and an escort, or of all of these freak offs, as will be heard today and throughout Cassie Ventura's testimony, trying to paint the case that Diddy was indeed engaging in a sexual organization, or a RICO or in a RICO case, so that indeed he can be charged with RICO in terms of prostitution, sexual assault, racketeering, all this other stuff that engaged in this enterprise. Let's continue.
I think part of the prosecution's description and eliciting testimony from her about how far from the norm some of these sexual acts were, in particular the urination episode, she really testified about sexual acts that involved being...
Okay, just to let you know, viewer discretion advised here. It's going to get a bit seedy in terms of some of the acts that were performed on Cassie Ventura and anyone involved in any of these freak-offs, quite simply. So viewer discretion advised, ladies and gentlemen. I caution you, this may get a bit, unseemly and again, quite X-rated, overtly X-rated. So viewer discretion advised, if I must say. Let's go.
Urinated on by multiple men, including Diddy.
Was it just men? I couldn't quite figure that out.
I think it was just men. That's how I interpreted it.
Certainly what his preference was, to watch men have sex with her. I couldn't tell if there were women involved in it. Not that it really matters. It certainly doesn't matter legally, but I just was curious about it.
Sure, unclear. Yeah. And part of her testimony was, she said she was urinated on by two men at some point, one of them being Diddy. And when pressed, she said, I thought, did you want this? And she said, I thought it was obvious. Her word was obvious that I wouldn't want this.
Right.
So that is sort of getting into the realm of convincing those jurors sitting there, could anyone possibly want to be urinated on? She said at some point there was so much urine in her mouth, she began to choke. Could anyone, can the jurors believe that anyone would want this done? There are certain sexual acts and call them perversions or whatever, that are hard for people, ordinary people on that jury, to believe anyone could consent to.
And remember, the standard here is not, could it theoretically be that she wanted all these things? That is certainly one way to look at it. But you're dealing with individual jurors who bring their own personal histories to every case, and they're going to be asked Do you think that a reasonable person would consent to this? Some people are going to say, yes, I think a reasonable person could. Some people,
And maybe in New York, you might get some of those jurors. These are not prudes. This is New York City. You're going to get some people who are worldly, cosmopolitan, and have active sexual lives of their own.
As I was reading through the testimony today, I wrote down sort of 8 things that I think that the defense is going to try to get out of her on the stand tomorrow, and also certainly will argue in closing arguments. The umbrella is the whole thing was consensual, that she could have left at any time. She could have terminated the relationship at any time. Though it sometimes made her feel uncomfortable, she never outright refused to engage in the sex acts. In fact, she would sometimes assist in the selection of the sex workers. She would sometimes be the person who actually handed over money to the sex workers without Diddy's present. He would often not even be there. She would have to FaceTime in with him, or he would elect to FaceTime in to watch from afar. She never told a family or a friend or family member that she wanted to stop. She never went to police. Is it deviant? Yes. Is it shocking? Yes. But ultimately, the defense is going to argue it was always, at the end of the day, consensual.
I think you're right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that indeed is the ultimate defense to coercion. In any sort of, if you learn this in criminal law, you learn this in tort law, that the ultimate defense to coercion in any act against one's will is consent, and that is indeed the defense is is the end all and be all defense for Diddy is the fact that she indeed paid the sex workers. She indeed helped select the sex workers who would have sex with her. She and again, like they said, they're going to play upon people's sexual predilections, because again, this is a sexual marketplace nowadays where such acts are indeed can be considered consensual to many an adult, and again, what may be someone's yuck could be someone else's yum, as they say, and I think the defense is going to try to show that indeed she wanted people to urinate on her. She wanted people to have sex with her other than Diddy. She wanted to participate in these freak-offs. So that is the ultimate defense against any sort of coercive act, and that is consent. So be looking for that going forward in terms of the cross-examination of Cassie Ventura. But again, what the prosecution is going to start out from the start is that this woman was held there beyond against her will. She participated in these acts against her will, and in order to please Diddy, so that she wouldn't have to suffer any consequences because of this. And they were shocking acts, to say the least, including the urination on Cassie, which I thought was shocking in and of itself. So again, I think that's going to gain a lot of attention from the jury itself. Again, do comment below if you have any questions regarding what we have here. But again, already on the second day, and there are bombshells going off regarding the Diddy trial already, and Cassie is letting out both barrels. And this is her mule after she received her $35 million from Diddy in order to keep these sort of details secret, but not anymore, according to the U.S. prosecution. So again, she is indeed double dipping, but she has every right to do so because she is indeed the U.S. attorney's key witness. Let's continue.
The defense, he's got very good lawyers. They're going to be able to score these points in their cross-examination of her, and they're going to be able to sort of puncture some of the narrative. They have to be very, very careful. We've talked about this before. She's a very sympathetic witness. Pregnant people are going to engender sympathy. As a matter of fact, Mark Agnifilo told the judge before, the attorney for Diddy said, look, pregnancy is a wonderful thing. It's also a way that people engender sympathy. Now, he didn't say this in front of her, but he was informing informing the judge that this could be prejudicial to my client just the way she looks.
What's the judge going to do about it? Hold the trial because she happens to be pregnant?
Can't do anything about it. It is just the nature of the beast.
But
Yeah, great point raised there by the TMZ commentators, the lawyers here on very good commentary in the sense that it's another reason why they're using this pregnancy at this time of Cassie's life as a way of engendering sympathy for her case. Since she is pregnant, she's a survivor of this sexual deviancy. She's bringing new life into the world. That's automatically going to garner sympathy. So indeed, I think the defense has already hinted at the fact that they're going to use this as a way of defending Diddy and try to and win back points on their matter, because automatically, because she's pregnant, because she's near birth with her child, that this is going to automatically garner sympathy from the jury. So again, it's this is a chess match as we move on throughout this criminal trial. I mean, this RICO case, this criminal trial. So again, do look for this, because again, this is sort of a psychological point to bear in terms of the Diddy case, the fact that their star witness is indeed with child. She will garner sympathy, and they'll think that her testimony should be taken seriously. But the the defense's job is to erase that idea from their minds and realize that we're dealing with a woman who was fully consensual to all these acts. Let's continue.
all of those defenses in some way, I think, crumble in the face of the Cassie videotape. And we have been wondering forever how the prosecution was going to use the videotape from the Intercontinental Hotel, that horrific beating video, and why it was so important to their case beyond just the atmosphere. It makes him look like a monster. We get that. But was there relevant, pertinent testimony that was going to be impacted by that? And I think this is exactly where it comes. The idea of consent, I just laid it out how the defense is going to argue it. It does melt away when you see that video because of her testimony. Her testimony is that that day she was in a freak off. She was in the hotel room with Diddy and a male sex worker, and she endured all of the conduct that we've previously described. She said that there was a session 2 scheduled after session 1 and a session 2. There's going to be a break.
And she wanted no part of it.
During the break, she said, "I'm leaving. I do not want to be here anymore. I want to leave." And this is to my knowledge of her testimony, the first time she ever testified that she said, "I don't want to be here anymore." She gathered up her things and she left, and he chased her down in the hallway, kicked the shit out of her, and then dragged her, kicking and screaming, literally kicking and screaming, back down the hallway by her hair into the room.
This, if
we
you believe
no
this
longer have any argument of consent. If the jury believes her, which is, credibility is always an issue here. If the jury believes her, all the arguments that she didn't consent fly out the window.
That's right. That
excellent point raised there by said TMZ expert. Excellent point in the sense that videotape is key. It is very key. It shows not only abuse but coercion. It is one of the few times where it's put on tape where Diddy running down the hallway is coercing her, and this it was alleged that that beating happened during a freak-off. On day 2 of the freak-off, she said she didn't want to be a part of it anymore. She wanted to leave. And in her trying to leave, Diddy threw her to the ground, attacked her, committed battery, and drug her back into the hotel room. So again, it is a show of coercion, point blank period, that cannot be denied by the prosecution. And they have to say that he was guilty of abuse, but not coercion, not these certain things. They'll try to defend that, but again, that is huge in the case of the prosecution, in the sense that Cassie was brought back to the room against her will. So therefore, consent could not be shown in that instance. Let's continue. And going forward, mind that ad. Let's continue.
That is forceful, violent. You will no longer have to play this dance out of whether or not she was in on the freak-offs. If she was trying to escape and he forcefully drags her back into a room, That's a rough day for Diddy. Now, Diddy, I think, will try to establish that something else happened entirely, that it had to do with him seeing something on a cell phone.
They had a mutually violent relationship.
A violent relationship.
Part of the course of their conduct, that they would often have these kind of like almost consensual, non-consensual kind of actions together. Then
he needs to do that.
Yes.
I mean, frankly, that is the death knell for Diddy. If she is credible on this point about wanting to leave that freak off, expressing verbally that she wanted to leave, trying to leave down the hallway and being dragged back in, that's really game, set, match. I do also want to point out some of the testimony she said about after the freak-offs. There's circumstantial evidence that these things weren't entirely sort of consensual acts. She described that there was baby oil all over the walls, and she said there would sometimes be blood on the linens. Because of the violent nature of these sex acts and the beating.
Hold on. And one other thing, she also said that he liked it when she was on her period.
I did.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I asked for viewer discretion. In that, Cassie, you heard right. Cassie said that Diddy liked it when Cassie had sex on her period. She liked it, when Aunt Flo came to town. Now, for most men, that would be a sign of, time out, don't want to be a part of it. But in this case, I mean, again, this was Diddy's yum. He liked when, women were involved in sexual intercourse while being on their period. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't make this stuff up. And Diddy. He had a lot of perversions, and this was one of them, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately. But I'm sure there are many people out there like that, and I'm sure that the defense will try to reel that back in some way, shape, or form. But sexual perversions are sexual perversions, and certain people will be shamed for such acts. But listen. Nothing else can be said about that. Let's continue.
You didn't read that part?
I didn't remember that part of the testimony.
I got this from the New York Times.
Well, then that's not going to be as helpful.
They testified. Well, no, there was some of that, but also he would schedule these things often during her period because
he had a fascination.
Whatever.
Sure. And that's not to yuck anyone's yuck.
That is just was the testimony. There was, I was going to make a point. I lost it. Anyway.
Right. But some of that blood could have been from the violence that she claims to have endured. And then if you have some hotel workers who come in and testify as to the state of the room after Diddy would leave the hotel, not being there present during the freak-offs, but just seeing the state of the room, the broken vases in the Intercontinental Hotel, some of that will start to look like an ordinary jury member that wasn't just sex going on in there, that was something more, and maybe some participant in it didn't want to be there.
One other point that I really want to make here, I think it's important, is she started to lay the foundation, the groundwork for the prosecution's case that he was the mastermind of a criminal enterprise, which I know is going to be the hardest thing for prosecutors to prove. She started to lay that by listing the employees that knew about the endeavors and that engaged and helped in these freak-offs. Remember, the freak-offs are a couple of things. Number one, you have the sex act, you have the coercion of Cassie into the sex act, and also you have the paying prostitutes to go across state lines, it's essential for a federal case, across state lines to engage in these freak-offs with Cassie.
That's right.
With he and Cassie. By listing the employees, here's the criminal enterprise.
Yes. Now we have others involved.
Friends. He was sending out people in order to do his bidding for him. There were FaceTimes being set up not by Cassie, but with other people in his employ. So there's a criminal act, which is the bringing people across state lines for coercive sex.
That he's coordinating.
That he is coordinating with a number of other people. Though if the prosecution can prove it, and they've got a long way to go to prove it, right? This is one witness, and there's a lot of hearsay, it seems, that might be involved here. They've got to prove it. But if they can prove it, here's your criminal enterprise. Here's the mastermind. Here's the RICO case.
That's exactly right. Everyone has been asking, is this just a customer of a prostitution company where he ordered some things? That's not a criminal enterprise. But all of a sudden, if you have employees, they have what's called a hub and spoke. In conspiracy and RICO cases, you'll hear this term, which means someone is the center and they are directing the spokes, like the spokes of a wheel. And there's your criminal enterprise. If they can establish Diddy, who in opening statements they said preferred to be called king, you now have your leader directing orders to underlings. There's your enterprise. And that's what the prosecution, as you said, this is day one of Cassie's testimony. She's not going to be their only witness on this point, but they need to start laying that foundation if they're going to uphold a conspiracy RICO type offense.
Yeah, just
excellent point raised there by the lawyers. They gave you a quite layman definition of what a RICO case is. Diddy being king, Diddy being the center of this RICO enterprise, he was the hub. He was the one in which the spokes were attached, and the spokes were his workers. Either part of Bad Boy Records, or part of Revolt, or part of his private staff. These people would help Diddy organize these parties, these freak-offs, bring in prostitutes from out of state into these different locales, either national or international, and these freak-offs would occur with these sex workers, with the help of these Diddy employees who would help organize these freak-offs, either by Zoom or by private meetings. So again, that is the RICO case right there, ladies and gentlemen. You have the hub, which is Diddy, the king being Diddy, and then employees being the spokes, and he's the one who directed everything so that these freak-offs would occur, and therefore the RICO charge. So I hope that is a great explanation to you. I thought that was excellent definition by these two prosecutors here, and that's why I thought this was the best description for what has gone on in the Diddy trials. We'll be following these guys going forward, quite simply, because they've really put it down to layman's terms so that everybody can understand, including you, the audience. So thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We are going through day 2 of the Diddy trial, Cassie's testimony, and what is indeed a RICO charge. So let's go. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live.
One last point. In addition to being like to be called the king, he was also the one, according to Cassie, who was actually bankrolling the whole thing.
Right.
She would sometimes hand the money over, but it was his money. So again, you're just establishing that he is the centerpiece of this criminal enterprise. These others are unindicted co-conspirators. They just because they're not also facing charges doesn't mean they weren't part of this larger conspiracy, this larger enterprise. But he has to be the fulcrum of it in order for them to really prove their case, and that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Obviously, huge day for Diddy, for Cassie, for the prosecution. She won the day, but that's what's going to happen every day during the prosecution's case in chief. When you turn to the defense's case or cross-examination of Cassie, you're going to have the tide switch back. As good a day as it was for the prosecution, I think by any measure it was a good day.
The ebb and flow of this case is just beginning.
Exactly.
And it will seem as though he is winning tomorrow. It just goes back and forth. The jury is going to be swimming in this for a while.
Right. All right, going to go to a few questions. One of them...
Great points raised there by the two experts from TMZ. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I just want to make sure I get their names. I hope they left it in the description here, because I want to give them credit where credit is indeed due. We have, let's see. No. Yes. No, I don't think they reveal their names. I hope we can catch them going forward behind the bar. Let me see if I can get their names, because I really want to give them the credit behind bar TMZ. Yes, Jason Beckerman and Derek Kaufman. Thank you very much. Jason Beckerman and Derek Kaufman. Thank you very much, Jason and Derek, for that. That is a really great explanation of what has gone on thus far. So we're just going to let this roll continue. But again, indeed, what cements the criminal enterprise is the finance of that criminal enterprise, and that came from Diddy, just to let you know. So again, that hub is, that centrifugal hub is key to this enterprise going, because without the money, you're not getting these freak offs done, and that came from Diddy himself. So that's what they're trying to prove here in this case, and why Cassie is indeed such a key witness to them, because again, she bore witness to all of these nefarious acts put on by Diddy and his staff and crew. So thank you very much. We're gonna let this roll for a little bit, because I think there's one question I wanted to answer regarding bribes, and that comes in this matter and its definition. Let's continue.
Jay Sans says, is bribery to cover up a crime legal in America? So a bunch of people have asked this and similar questions. I want to hit on this. We talked about it, I believe, yesterday, because there was evidence that Diddy had tried to pay off the hotel staffer, the security guard, in order to not go public, to quiet down this videotape, to somehow not talk about what he had seen. Bribery, by definition, has to involve a law enforcement official or a public official, a policeman or a politician, basically. You are permitted, under the law, it is not bribery, to pay a private citizen to keep something quiet. Period.
So we're going to leave it there for now. We're going to come back to part 2 of this, and we're going to finish the definition of a bribe in just a second. Stay with us for part 2. Thank you very much for joining me in Talk Live on IG, YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We're going to get back into things here. We're just going to renew the feed on IG. So give me 1 second. There we go. Bang, bang, bang. Thank you, man. So we're going to get into what bribe is, ladies and gentlemen. We're back here live on Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me here. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. But we were explaining what a bribe was. And today we are discussing the Diddy trial in the first few days of the Diddy trial, the first week of the Diddy trial. And yeah, it's getting spicy, ladies and gentlemen. Cassie is on the stand, the star witness for the prosecution, and she's let out some salacious revelations regarding Diddy, how he liked his sex, that he indeed, the fact that he allegedly paid workers in order to have these sexual acts, how Diddy liked Diddy liked Cassie and his women to participate in that sex, how what sort of ways did he like to have his sex? What sort of how should I say, the turn-ons Diddy had with regards to how he liked his sex, the sort of perversions he had with regards to his women in regard to his sex with Cassie and et al. So again, so that's where we are here on day 2, and it will continue into day 3 today. So we're going to get a final look at what happened today in the trial. But also, we're just defining what a bribe is. And a bribe, as was explained, and if you did not hear here on Talk Live on Instagram, but it's here on YouTube, a bribe is indeed trying to gain influence of a public figure through some sort of monetary or other means, through offering of goods and services. So, they're getting to what a bribe isn't, and what a bribe isn't is a contract between two people to exchange money for a service, or exchange money for one's silence. And they'll get into this right now. And thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live on hour 2 of the Diddy trial, week 1. Let's continue.
End of sentence. It happens every single day. There are NDAs where we sign. There are hush money agreements. Totally legal unless it's a public official, police officer, politician.
That's exactly right. These are contractual arrangements. You are allowed to agree with someone for a sum of money not to speak about something embarrassing.
So this security guard at the Intercontinental, totally fine. Had that been a police officer working at the Intercontinental that day, that's bribery. That you go to prison for.
Excellent points raised by the lawyers Beckerman and Kaufman. Excellent points raised there by Beckerman and Kaufman in that, yes, a bribe is only trying to pay for the to coerce the act of a public official rather than a private person. If it's a private person, it's considered a contract. Two people. So if you're bribing a witness, it's not really bribing a witness. You're actually entering into a contract with a witness not to testify. So that is total. Well, that is considered legal. I would have to do some legal research on that, but that is totally legal. So if you want to have someone, keep their name out of a trial and bribe them, so be it. I think that happened on a few occasions in this trial itself, and it happens all the time. If a person can be bribed to not testify, that is a contract, or to have an NDA not to divulge any information or divulge of any sort of acts. NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, happen all the time, especially when it comes to sexual occurrences between people. Especially if one of those people are in the public eye, NDAs are totally valid and totally legally and binding contracts. So again, these are forms of contract if you are going to that are go between private persons. But if a private person is trying to bribe a public person, be it a politician, policeman, or indeed a public official, or a private person, politician, or a judge, then that can be considered bribery, and that is indeed a crime, a felony, to be fair. Let's continue.
Will the defense show any videos or pictures, phone calls, texts as proof? Just curious. We got to hear it all right.
That's they have that helps their case.
Exactly. Anything that they can sort of lay the foundation for. It's hard to get these pieces of evidence in sometimes because you have to show sort of the provenance of them, and there's various evidentiary rules. But yes, anything that they have that is hard evidence, they will try to admit as evidence and have someone up there to authenticate it.
Year 3, though, I think I'm pronouncing that right, says, what happened to duty to retreat? Cassie could have ran. There's no such duty. There's certainly, I think maybe we're conflating certain things.
Legal doctrines
doctrines.
About sort of encountering someone.
Yeah, but a victim of sexual assault, which is what she asserts that she is, and what the prosecutors say that they are, have no duty to retreat. You can certainly be the subject of sexual assault. You can be the victim of rape, even though you don't take every opportunity to get out of the situation.
That's exactly right. And Victor said,
so we're going to let them do their continuation of that, of the questions. And thank you, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Beckerman, for that. But we're going to go to the third day today. What happened today in the Diddy trial? And let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live.
Day 6 of the Diddy trial, and Cassie Ventura took the stand and testified for nearly a full day about her relationship with Diddy. And I believe that the testimony was more intense, more sensational, and I think more disturbing than I or just about anybody realized it was going to be. Derek, if you can for us, give us the highlights of Cassie's testimony. How did this go down? She was on the stand for better part of 5 or 6 hours today. What exactly happened?
Yeah, this really was a full day of testimony. It's the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Cassie came to the stand. She is, of course, pregnant, and she was ready to testify about the full course of her relationship with.
Let me make sure that I got this right on the right day. No, we're good. We're good. No, we are good. That's fine. Let's go.
Diddy. And remember, they were together for 10 years. This was a decade-long relationship.
Hold on just a second. Let's make sure that we have this correct. 1 second, guys. I may have got the wrong video. This sounds like this was done yesterday. Okay, here we go. I think this is it here. Sorry about that. Let's go.
Everybody, welcome back to Behind the Bar, day 7 of the Diddy trial. So much happened today. Cassie took the stand for a second full day of direct testimony. Testimony being she was asked questions by the prosecution for another full day. The defense is going to get their chance to cross-examine her starting tomorrow. Today, for the prosecution, was all about connections of Diddy to the freak-offs and of the power that he allegedly held over her. As part of that, what the defense is trying to set up is some sort of an argument that she in some way consented. She could have left at any time. That's what the defense is saying. There were a lot of comments yesterday saying that Derek and I were somehow signing on to this idea that a woman who continues to go back to an abusive boyfriend is somehow consenting. Not at all the cases. As a matter of fact, there's a ton of scientific literature out there that suggests just the opposite, that frequently a woman who's a victim of domestic violence, of this kind of violence, of sexual violence, will nevertheless stay with her abuser through some sort of an emotional attachment to that person, despite the fact that they are not consenting to the activity at all. We're simply doing what we're doing here is laying out what the prosecution is going to say and laying out what the defense is going to say, because the defense, again, Derek, just needs that one witness, that one juror who thinks like a troglodyte and says, well, she could have left at any time, and the fact she didn't leave, didn't go to the police, makes her a willing participant in all this, and therefore not guilty.
That's right, and we're trying to be balanced in our approach. We're telling you what the prosecutors need to establish to prove the elements of the offenses that they've charged Diddy with, but we're also going to tell you how the defense plans to poke holes in that theory. And in doing so, there's no endorsement one way or another. The prosecution has the burden. That's just the way criminal trials work. And Diddy's team only needs to convince one juror to say, well, you didn't prove that element, and he gets a mistrial and he's off the hook. If he convinces all of them, he's acquitted. So we're trying to lay out how this will play out without any sort of thumb on the scale in one direction or another.
As balanced as we're trying to be, the testimony today by Cassie was some of the most damning trial testimony I have ever heard in all the trials that we've been following in our careers. She just simply put at his feet a level of control, abuse, rape, physical, emotional violence that paints him out to be a true monster. And we haven't even talked about the videotape.
That's right. And that was a real centerpiece of her testimony. She discussed an incident on a plane flight.
Yes.
During this flight, she says she was sitting next to Diddy at some point, and he took out an iPad and showed her on his iPad videos of past freak-offs. And in her mind...
And these videos, sorry, just to interrupt, these videos all featured her having sex with other men and doing all sorts of sort of
degrading
acts. Yeah.
Yes. And she, at this point, had already said that she was trying to communicate that she didn't want to do freak-offs anymore. She had said that she had said to Diddy at some point, delete the videos. And him showing her that videos existed on his iPad, she interpreted it as a threat to release those videos, to subsequently send those out into the world, humiliate her, destroy her career, embarrass her to her family, and so forth. She says after that plane flight they got off, they went to dinner in New York, and during that dinner, Diddy said, I would like to do a freak-off. Cassie, and the language she used was she felt trapped at this point. And the way prosecutors are trying to set this up is that he trapped her by the implicit threat that if she didn't continue in this lifestyle with him, which included freak-offs, he would embarrass her by releasing these tapes. That's what the prosecutors are trying to establish.
Defense is going to say, well, she never specifically tied it up and said that, but for that unless you do more freak-offs, I'm going to release the tapes. I don't think that was quite the testimony.
That's
but
right.
Nevertheless, you're creating this entire atmosphere that he was so physically abusive with her, and showed her these
had
tapes.
Such a psychological hold on her at this point.
And with these tapes, she would say, "I want you to delete that." He would say, "Yeah, I deleted them all, clean. I don't have my iCloud on. That's clean as well." And then 2 weeks later, she would do something that would upset him, and he'd say, "Do it again." And here's the video, and she wouldn't have deleted it. He lied to her, saying, according to Cassie, lied to her, saying he deleted him when he in fact hadn't.
Yeah, and to your point, part of Diddy's strategy here is going to be that, yes, there was violence in our relationship. He can't get around that 2016 video in the Intercontinental Hotel. So part of his strategy seems to be, yes, we had fights. I do have a temper. It gets the best of me. But these fights weren't about keeping her in the sexual hold of these freak-offs. What they were about was, in the Intercontinental, we had an argument about a cell phone. And that was just a dispute that was unrelated to us continuing in these freak-offs. I never held her against her will for these freak-offs. When I said, here are these videos, I was upset about her taking drugs from me. And this was a fight that
dating somebody else.
Dating someone else. I was a very jealous person, but none of it had to do with forcing her into continuing to participate in freak-offs. So there seemed to be sort of trying to puncture holes in each of these episodes as unrelated to him sex trafficking her.
So very good couching of what is going on at day 7 in the sense of, well, the prosecution in the examination in chief of Ventura is trying to set things up so that in showing Cassie the iPhone videos of the freak offs and keeping her in the hotel rooms and doing all these things, it's showing it's showing the jury that Cassie had no way out of any of these in her participation of these freak offs. She wanted to leave. She wanted to go. She wanted to move on. However, due to these videotapes and due to Diddy's power influence, not only on through his musical influence, but also through his many minions within his Rico organization, there was no way out for Cassidy. So she had to participate in these freak-offs. But as Beckerman and Kaufman are saying here, the defense is going to paint a totally different story in the sense that she was free to leave whenever she wanted to. I just wanted to show the error of her ways in showing, in her participation of these freak-offs, by showing how drunk she was, how high she was, in order to get herself involved in these sexual acts. And that would be the defense's case, that Cassie wanted to participate in these freak-offs. She was free to leave whenever she wanted. They had arguments. Yes, there were. Diddy had a temper, and especially during that filmed battery and abuse physical abuse of Cassie Ventura. However, he was not a Svengali. He was not a man who was prone to violence, and he would again allow for Cassie to leave whenever she wanted. But again, so there are two, counter art. There are two. There's point and counterpoint to this prosecution. So, and it's well done by Beckerman and Kaufman here to show indeed that not only showing the prosecution case, but the defense's case, not only showing what the prosecution wished to prove, but also playing devil's advocate and what the defense wished to prove as well. So well done on their part. But again, very salacious views here. It continues as we speak. But let's get into it again. Let's continue.
Good luck with that.
Good luck. It's also not how many humans communicate. You don't really say, I will do X if you don't do Y. Only in movies do you see it so cleanly laid out. A lot of times people just know what a threat is. You know it when you see it. You'd be like, it'd be a pity if these videos got out, wouldn't it? That's a threat too.
So she testified over and over again that as part of the freak-offs, he would physically abuse her, left her with black eyes. When he was upset with her outside of the freak-offs, he would physically abuse her, beat her. One day, she said she wasn't going to go to a party. He then shows up at the party, and she showed up as well. He caught her there, basically. And she knew right away she was going to get beaten, so she ran. Later that night, he comes to the hotel, breaks in the door, beats the hell out of her. This pattern of unbelievable, not just the physical abuse, the psychological abuse that he was perpetrating on her was something.
Now, I want to get into something that was also part of this testimony that will be interesting to see how it plays out. This is the end of their relationship, Jason. What did she testify as to the last time they had, 2 years after the hotel incident in 2018?
Yep.
What happened there?
So 2 years after the relationship, she has started to date another man. They've gone their separate ways.
Who she's now married to.
Eventually this man becomes her husband. They go out to dinner. Diddy and Cassie go out to dinner, just the two of them at a public Malibu restaurant. She says it was a closing conversation. That's the way she described it. That's what she thought it was going to be. He drives her back to her house to drop her off. He then gets out of his car, follows into her house, and she says rapes her on the floor of her house. Incredibly damning testimony once again.
Very upsetting, although he is not in this federal prosecution being charged with rape.
That would be a state court crime, and that's 7 years ago. I'm not saying it's outside of the statute of limitations, but you need evidence. There's no evidence for that beyond her testimony, and it's a hard thing to base a rape case on. And then again, that would be a state court prosecution. But then something else happens where she says the defense asks, "Did you ever see him again? And did you ever have sex with him again?" And she said, "Yes, I had sex with him one more time, and it was voluntary.
Right.
Now, again, this goes back
is her
to
own
Derek and
testimony.
I calling balls and strikes here. The defense is going to run with this testimony that she says all along that she didn't want to be with him, that he's this monster, that she objected to the freak-offs, that he violently rapes her in 2018, but she goes back again and has consensual sex with him.
Now, there are explanations. People
Sure.
can be in the psychological throes, even.
So again, yeah, I mean, this is again, as they said in the last video, this is going to be an ebb and flow sort of trial where the prosecution and defense are going to win points on both sides, and here again, we see the point of Cassie Ventura moving on and dating Alex, as we see here. We don't get his last name just yet. Her now husband and soon to be father of her child. As they were dating at the time, Diddy saw her out at a Malibu restaurant. After the date with Alex, followed her home and allegedly raped and had committed sexual assault against Cassie on the floor of said household. So it was very, very graphic, very, very pronounced and tawdry sort of description of what had gone on with Diddy and Cassie. However, as they stated again, when asked if she had sex with Diddy ever again, she said yes, and this was consensual. So again, it's as stated, this is something that both the prosecution and the defense, this is something that the defense would pounce upon immediately, in the sense that you're still having consensual sex with Diddy, even though you're stating the fact that you were afraid of him and that he was and that he had raped you at times. So again, if he had raped you, you never want to have sex with him again, allegedly, but in fact you did have sex with him. So again, this is something where this is going to be at this time going to be the prosecution are going to gain points at this time because they're getting examination in teeth from Cassie. However, the defense is going to win points upon cross-examination with regards to their points. So, and that remains to be seen as of yet. But we're dealing with the examination in chief here, and again, a point that was for the prosecution in this case is the fact that Diddy indeed allegedly raped, sexually assault, essayed Cassie in 2018 after they broke up. However, they had, something in the a feather in the cap of the defense is the fact that Diddy had consensual sex with Cassie one more time after said essay. So, be that as it may, we'll see how that plays out with the jury. Let's continue.
Years later, someone can trigger you and make you feel in fear, but his lawyers are going to have a field day with this, because at this point in her life, it seemed as though she had overcome those enough to escape, start dating seriously another man, Alex Fine, who became her husband, and nevertheless subsequently had consensual voluntary sex with Diddy. It sort of breaks the chain of the psychological abuse that she was in earlier. I'm not saying that she couldn't have been triggered and that Diddy, just the sight of him, could have caused her to feel fear. That can certainly be true. It's true of many battered women. But it will be a more difficult thing for her to explain once Diddy's lawyers have a chance to talk about that.
I have to tell you, before I had heard that testimony, it was a lot of commentators online talking about it. It's hard to see where the defense goes with this line of questioning. You have to find such narrow windows for them to strike, because her testimony, and everybody in the courtroom, we're not in the courtroom, we're just reading the transcript or the trial testimony. Everybody in the courtroom says that she was the most compelling witness there could have possibly been. She seemed authentic, truthful, honest, composed, had emotion when emotion would have been, anybody would have had emotion, but otherwise was terrific. This piece of testimony at the end, I think, was a bit of a gift to the defense, because, again, to your point, it definitely does not mean that he did not do all these horrible things to her, but it gives the defense something to point out to that lone juror, that one juror who's looking for a reason not to prosecute. here might be that little
She
tether.
left the door open ajar a
Yeah.
bit, is how I think of it. I mean, she has basically had a great 2 days of testimony from the prosecution's standpoint. I do think it's quite effective. There's sort of gestalt to it all, right? Even if you believe that Diddy is able to poke holes in individual parts of this,
Such a good
the
point.
sum of
Yeah.
her testimony and how it lands on jurors, I think, is going to be very, very hard for Diddy to overcome.
We lawyers get
So
caught up.
again, great points raised there by Kaufman and Peter. Peter, is it Kaufman and Peterson? Oh, one second. I'm sorry, guys. Kaufman and Beckerman. Sorry. Great points raised there by Kaufman and Beckerman in this case, in the sense that yes, indeed, there are holes that can be picked from from the prosecution. I mean, by the defense in terms of indeed having consensual sex with Diddy after NSA, and also in terms of being a part of the criminal enterprise, she being a participant in said criminal enterprise by by helping stage these sex parties. However, as stated, as stated, Cassie has been a very good witness for the prosecution. Very, very good. A very key witness at that. And she is, I think her state of being pregnant, the fact that she is indeed crying when necessary, as stated, is working for her rather than against her. And it is something that that is going to prove very difficult to overcome for the defense. So again, they are very good. They wouldn't be paid the retainers they are paid if they weren't very good. So again, it remains to be seen what sort of cross-examination is going to happen in this matter, and that will help rather than hurt Diddy. But again, as a star witness thus far, as stated by these gentlemen, and as can be seen by many, Cassie Ventura has proven to be a very, very key and very, very valid and truthful witness. To be fair, let's continue.
Up in the picayune matters of what is the true definition of consent, what is the true definition of coercion, and the jury will certainly be asked to find those picayune distinctions. But in general, what they have here is more than enough evidence to convict, and if they hate him enough, they can do it. They can hang their hat on the legalities of it all. The defense wants to make it impossible for them to do that, but it's going to be very, very difficult. So what you have here, to your point about gestalt, about atmosphere, about this, or they described, Cassie's testimony has described an unmitigating monster. And there's no
hard to shake
escaping
that sense.
It's going to be hard to shake that sense unless they can really get after her on cross. It seems hard to know how they would do that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. He's got very skilled lawyers. Cross does start to feel differently. If it's very effective, you can start to question people's credibility and so forth. As we've said, the last 2 days of testimony have not been softballs. It's been very emotional for her, but she has been allowed to lay out her narrative. That's what prosecutors do. They set up questions and let you talk. When you're crossed, it's a very different situation on the stand.
I just wanted to give one more quote and then we can get to your questions. When asked by the prosecution why she stayed with him, she said, and there's a quote, "I feared for my career. I feared for my family. It's horrible. It's disgusting. No one should do that to anyone." I just thought that was incredibly powerful.
It's been an incredibly powerful 2 days of testimony. Let's get to some questions.
Okay, just before we get to those questions, ladies and gentlemen, you can see, I mean, listen, Kathy is, she's done herself justice here. She's really proven to be a very, very credible witness. And it's going to be hard for the defense to break her down and see her as being someone who doesn't deserve that credit, doesn't deserve to be believed. So again, good on the prosecution for doing a very good job in presenting their witness, quite simply. And listen, when you have such words as gestalt and picayune, I'll be looking for those in the dictionary tonight. These gentlemen are indeed Harvard-educated lawyers. Let me say that. Harvey has definitely chosen the best lawyers to represent TMZ here. And again, I think they've really settled the case in a very fair-minded and equal sort of manner. not leaning to one side or the other, and giving both sides of the argument in this matter. So again, very good on their part. We're going to get to a few of these questions, and then we're going to wrap up for tonight. But that's what happened today. It is indeed Cassie who is still providing testimony for the prosecution. She's giving her examination in chief. I'm sure by tomorrow it will be a day where the defense will indeed have a chance to poke holes in her arguments, but it's going to be very difficult for them to do so. So looking forward to that. But let's get into these questions and then wrap up the show. Let's go.
And so Savannah asks, why is everyone focusing on Cassie's ability to leave? The hiring of escorts is already enough to elicit the sex trafficking charges.
100% correct. There are
Great
three
point.
charges here, one of which is the bringing across state lines process. And the reason state lines is important here, it's a federal crime. It would be a state crime if it was just within. If you go ahead and pick up a prostitute on a street corner, pay them, that's a state crime. If you bring them across state lines for the purpose of sex, that's a federal crime. It's going to be very easy to prove that crime.
That is one of the counts. Transportation to engage in prostitution. That's the easiest count that they have.
It also probably doesn't come with much jail time, if any.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the least important of the charges they have to. You just have to say you crossed state lines, you knowingly hired escorts for the purposes of sex.
I don't even think
that's enough.
Diddy's going to even put up a defense to that one crime.
That doesn't put you in jail, in prison for life.
It really does. He's already served. What has he served? He's been in jail for what, in prison for what, 9 months, 6 to 9 months now. He's been serving.
That's the type of offense.
That's time served. That's time served. In order to get the kind of up to life in prison, they'll never get that no matter what, but the decade or two in prison, what they really need is to get into the sex trafficking charges,
by force, fraud, or coercion. That's why they're focusing on Cassie, because when you hire a prostitute, you don't have to do so by force, fraud, or coercion. They're doing it
for money,
transactionally,
that's
for money,
which is a different crime.
But for Cassie, she's key to the sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion.
And the
That's
issue
why they're
here
focusing
is
on
by
it.
coercion, right? They coerced her into this sex trafficking operation. And then the other element of it, did he do it with other people? They're laying the groundwork with the various employees. But again, it's a very good question, Savannah, but the answer is that's just one tiny bit of a crime. That's really a time.
If they only get that conviction, that's a loss.
That's a loss, right? Claire Owen says,
So again, well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. So just to let you know, indeed, to be involved in bringing over an escort across state lines in order to engage in sexual activity, it is pretty much a life felony, if not a misdemeanor, which is involved in the time served that he's already given for these crimes. But for the sex crimes involving in sexual enterprise by force, fraud, or coercion, as stated, that and involved in a criminal enterprise to do that, which is the RICO charge, that brings upon the 15 years to life sentence for Diddy. That's the crux. That is the meat and potatoes of this prosecution against Diddy. They really want to get him on the sex charge for force, fraud, and coercion, and also the RICO charge. So they really are, as these lawyers have already said, they're not going to put up a defense regarding solicitation of prostitution. That's pretty much, it is considered illegal in certain states, but if there are, if you're in like a state like in a state like Nevada and in Las Vegas, where they have where prosecution is considered legal, and you can go out to different type of establishments and estates and acres where sex can be practiced legally in exchange for money, then it would be considered not a crime, but in certain states it is a crime, but it's considered really a misdemeanor. It's time served, it's community service, it's nothing worth bringing upon any sort of criminal record, to be fair. So again, the meat and potatoes of this crime, the real chunk, the real grit and gristle of this charge is all about sexual contact involving force, fraud, or coercion, and also the criminal enterprise staging these crimes in and of itself. That's the meat and potatoes. That is the huge the huge part of this prosecution against Sean P. Diddy Combs. Let's continue with one more question, then we'll end up the show.
My husband just told me about the court asked Cassie to remain seated so the jurors didn't know she was pregnant. It wasn't the court who did that. That was the defense counsel asked that when the jurors are marched in and put in the jury box, that the witness Cassie would already be seated, so they wouldn't necessarily be able to focus on the fact she's pregnant.
I think that's a fair give.
The court overruled that though. And the court said, no, I'm sorry, she's going to walk in like any other witness does. And so she did, in fact, walk into court in front of the juror.
But I thought it was a good move of Diddy's attorneys to say, look, she can testify, but she can't stand up and look angelic with her pregnant belly. That might be prejudicial to my client. That's why they made the ask, and the judge ruled as they did. And it's a fair ruling as well. But I thought it was a cagey move by them.
Peace World Lord says, I don't understand
we're
how...
going to leave it right there, ladies and gentlemen, as they continue with questions from the audience. So that is indeed the extent of, let's see if there's any other further questions here. We are good to go. So that is the extent of things up until now. I'll just get back to the main screen here. Yes, back to the full cam. So what we have right now is indeed Diddy, Diddy. Cassie Ventura still on the stand, still providing evidence in chief, still I think they're just summing up because they're just ending their line of questioning for Cassie. I believe that the defense will cross-examine the witness Cassie Ventura tomorrow because I think they moved on to the point where Cassie has indeed was dating Alex Fine, and she is moving on with her life, and but still had been essayed / had consensual sex with Diddy one final time, I believe, in 2018. So that is where we stand up until this time. Cassie has been a very, very good witness for the prosecution. All witnesses have been very, very good for the prosecution, to be fair. But again, Cassie being the number one witness for the prosecution has done an excellent job thus far. It remains to be seen what will happen in terms of the cross-examination by the defense attorneys in this matter, and the trial will continue. So, but again, it is a riveting trial thus far, very graphic at times, and it is definitely caught the attention of the world at large, and we'll be looking at this on a weekly basis here on Talk Live. So do stay tuned. If anything changes in terms of if we have a defense in terms of Cassie Ventura, we will dedicate part, if not all, of the show tomorrow on that regarding defense, regarding Cassie's defense. So stay tuned here on Talk Live with regard to the Diddy trial. This is something that is captivating the world because it has, again, celebrity, salacious activities, and juicy crimes available here. So again, the world will want to see this, and you will be able to capture it here on Talk Live. So stay tuned for more details tomorrow on Talk Live, live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for your questions. Do comment below on what you think of the trial thus far. Look forward to hearing from your comments here on IG and YouTube, and I'll be able to discuss that with you then. But until that time, thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. We're going to end it right here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to get into this playoff game and get to the gym tonight. Lord knows, get a quick workout in because Lord knows I need it. It has been a very, very busy few days, and I feel it on my belly, and I'm not going to let that go forward without a fight. So I'll be doing that tonight. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We're going to end it right here. Tomorrow night, we'll be back with Cassie's cross-examination, if not a new show, in part of a new show tomorrow night as well. Thank you very much for joining me, and good night from Toronto on IG. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on YouTube. We are going to be back with, again, a part, if not all, of a new show regarding the Diddy trial. It is captivating the world right now as we speak. Cassie is still giving her examination in chief and doing a wonderful job at that. But it's yet to be seen what the defense will come up in terms of a cross examination.